a general overview on the digestive system, when we start to talk about the different digestive concerns throughout this course, what you're going to notice is that so many people are suffering from digestive issues, whether it be reflux, constipation, diarrhea, upset stomach, irritable bowel syndrome. Over 70 million people now have some gut disorder, and other people have gut concerns and don't even know it. And so when we talk about how to fix these, we really have to understand the physiology of the gut and the digestive system and how it works. So this is a general overview of what we are going to learn more about during this entire course and the basic principles of the digestive system. So when we talk about physiology and anatomy, one of the things that I always tell people is that structure reflects function. So when we look at structure, which is the basic anatomy of the digestive system, that is how we can start to look at how the function of the digestive system works. And so as you can see from this slide, that there's a lot of information to go over in the digestive system. So we're going to put it into very easily digestible pieces. Digestive starts in the mouth. So as soon as food goes into your mouth, that's when digestive begins. So we'll talk more about the whole digestive system. I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview right now and a basic idea of how digestion works. So when we put something into our mouth, the salivary glands start to release saliva, which we all have heard of. What the saliva does is two main things. It moistens the food so that we can start to soften it, so that we can get it down the esophagus and into the digestive system. And it also has enzymes in it, especially amylase. What amylase does is it breaks up carbohydrates. So the second we start to put food into our mouth and we start to chew, then we start to break the food up. There are other organs that play a major role in digestion besides just that hollow tube that we think of from the mouth to the anus. There's also different digestive issues like the pancreas, which we call an accessory organ. The pancreas also, just like the salivary glands, release enzymes. And so these enzymes are responsible for breaking down the different food we eat. Lipases break down fat, proteases break down protein, and amylases break down carbohydrates. And then we'll also talk about the liver in this course. The liver is also an accessory or second organ in digestion. What it does is it helps to break down more of the food, and it also produces an important part of digestion called bile. And we'll talk about how the liver and the gallbladder work together in order to both produce bile and then to store it when we need it to break down and what we call emulsify fat. To emulsify fat means that the bile will surround it and break up the fat so that we can then start to break it up with the different enzymes. The gallbladder, it's a little green sac that's actually in the back part of the liver. A lot of people know about the gallbladder because they know somebody or themselves have had to get the gallbladder removed, or they've had gallstones or other gall problems. So we can actually remove the gallbladder if need be, because if there are concerns or problems with it. But the gallbladder actually plays an important role in digestion because it's holding the bile. When we need it, then it starts to release it, especially if we eat a meal in high fat, because the bile is responsible for breaking up the fat. The other thing, though, that a lot of people don't realize about bile, and we'll get into a lot in this course, is that bile also helps to detoxify the body. So it plays an important role, especially in fat soluble, which are toxins that are exposed or attract to more fat material. Those fat soluble toxins, bile is responsible for helping to start break those down and to get those out of the digestive system. So the liver and the gallbladder's role in bile is very important for digestion. And a lot of problems, including problems with stomach acid, come from gallbladder or liver problems and the bile not working correctly. So we'll talk a lot about that during the course too, because once you start to learn this, then you can understand how you can take your own health or health of loved ones or other people you know into your own hands and start to do easy things to help improve health and wellness. So when we get back to that basic part of digestion and the first part, the first step in any kind of digestion is the mouth. So when we take food in, what we're doing is we're chewing it up to break it into smaller pieces. We're moistening it with the saliva, and then we start to get it down into the esophagus, which is the tube that carries the food from the mouth to the stomach. So the second that we start to eat food, that's the second that digestion starts. It's also why it's so important to digest the food, to chew it as much as you can, break it down as much as you can, because the more that you break down and allow that food to break down in your mouth, the better that you'll aid digestion throughout the whole process. The esophagus is a pretty simple organ in the whole realm of digestion. So from the mouth to the stomach, we have a very large tube, and it's called the esophagus. And what the esophagus does is it carries the food down from the mouth into the stomach. The stomach is one of the major parts of digestion, obviously. We will get into this a lot more during the course. Right now, I just want to give you sort of a general overview, sort of a 101 on digestion. But when we look at the stomach is very responsible for the actual process of starting digestion. When we talk about absorption, that's much more into the small intestine. But what the stomach does is it takes the food that comes from the esophagus that has already been in the mouth, and it starts to expose it to what we call gastric juices. Whenever you hear the word gastric, that means stomach. So gastric juices are the different enzymes and different hydrochloric acid, other gastric digestive juices that the stomach releases in order to start to break down that food. So we have different things that we release in the stomach. This includes pepsin, which helps to release and break down protein. We also have something called intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor's whole role is just to absorb vitamin B12. So when we talk about vitamin B12 and we talk about older people having difficulty absorbing and getting their vitamin B12 levels where they should be, that's all because the stomach isn't working the way that it should, and the intrinsic factor is not doing what it's supposed to. So intrinsic factor is another important part of the stomach that we'll talk about more during the course. What happens is that after the stomach starts to churn and mix the food and then starts to release it into the small intestine, that food should already start to be pretty well digested in order to get it into the small intestine so absorption can start to occur. And then when we get to that small intestine, what happens is that we really now are looking at absorption. There's three major parts of the small intestine, so the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. But what happens is once that broken down food that we now call chyme, C-H-Y-M-E, gets into the small intestine, what happens then is that we start to absorb it. This is another great example of how structure reflects function, because when we look at the small intestine, the whole purpose of the small intestine is surface area. It's a large tube that's coiled up on itself, and then within that tube there are little, what we call microvilli, or little pouches throughout. What those pouches do is they allow all of that broken down sort of slimy chyme that's come from the stomach to be exposed to that surface area so we can start to absorb it into the blood and utilize the vitamins and minerals the way that we should. So when you think of small intestine, think of large surface area and think of absorption. And then the final step in digestion is the large intestine. Really, when we look at large intestine, because remember, now that food has gone through the stomach, got all those gastric juices, it's pretty slimy and wet. Now what we have to do is reabsorb the water and make it into feces so we can get rid of the stuff we don't need. So large intestine is really about elimination, getting rid of everything that we don't want, and getting it out of the body, and also absorbing the water that we want to recycle and get back into the body. If our large intestine isn't working correctly, that's when we start to see a lot of loose stools or diarrhea. So that's just a little information, just a small piece of the pie, what we're going to talk about with digestive health. There's really going to be three major parts. I am going to break down the physiology and anatomy for you so that you understand how the gut works. It's amazing with gut health, if you just understand how the gut works, how many changes you can make in your daily life in order to improve digestion. We're also going to talk about the importance of digestion. I actually think digestion is the most important organ system that we have because it affects the immune system so much. It affects the brain. It affects overall health. Vitamins and minerals, we can't do anything without proper absorption and utilization. So we'll talk about the importance of the digestive system. Then we'll also talk about different kinds of digestive concerns that you see every day, from GERD or reflux to irritable bowel syndrome. And we'll talk about each one, and then after we talk about the concern and you know the physiology, you can start to see then the things that you can do to improve, to both prevent and to help if you are having concerns with any of these digestive problems. So welcome to 101. This is just the beginning. We're going to break it down in a lot of different steps, a lot of different ways. Our goal here is to get you to really understand, but to learn this, because once you really look at it, the digestive system makes a lot of sense. So I want to break it down in a way that is easy for you to understand, but then also to apply it to your everyday health and wellness. So excited to teach this course, and a lot more is coming your way.
One way to learn and be healthy.